indeed. Well, look, let's move on to Israel then, and what they're up to with Yemen.
Yes, so it all began, of course, it all began back on the 7th of October, and it began, again, the war against Yemen began, if people don't remember, back in March 2015, a totally illegal aggression by Saudi Arabia after even the UN peace envoy to Yemen had stated that there was no need for aggression. Yemen had politically resolved its issues. So a few days ago, Yemen targeted Ben Gurion Airport in Israel, bypassing effectively 4 layers of air defense, starting in Saudi Arabia and then with the American THAAD system and the various Israeli air defense systems to create a crater of 25 meters in depth. This, of course, caused the shutdown of Ben Gurion Airport and the threat by Yemen to impose an air blockade combined with their naval blockade in the Red Sea. So Israel and the US carried out combined strikes against Sana'a, the capital city of Yemen. And if we roll the video, I'll just talk through it. So US bombed Sana'a, the capital city, while Israel bombed the Yemeni Sana'a main airport, targeting civilian aircraft, the runways, the arrival and departure terminals, killing 4 people and injuring 39, claiming that they disabled the airport fully. Of course, that claim has been made quite a few times, 2015. But what we must remember is that the US and Israel have admitted themselves that they have absolutely no on-the-ground intelligence in Yemen, unlike within their neighboring countries in the region, like Syria and Lebanon, for example. And this is Mohammed al-Shami, a Yemeni commentator on X, who went on saying that it's reported that they bombed Sana'a airport terminal, service facilities at the airport, as well as civilian aircraft, as I said, and the Amran cement factory. And then let's have a look. This was a bit of a surprise announcement by President Trump in the last 24 hours. So let's play his announcement.
We had some very good news last night. The Houthis have announced that they are not, or they've announced to us at least, that they don't want to fight anymore. They just don't want to fight. And we will honor that. And we will stop the bombings. And they have capitulated. But more importantly, we will take their word. They say they will not be blowing up ships anymore. And I will accept their word. And we are going to stop the bombing of the Houthis, effective immediately.
Now, I would suggest, and I'd be interested in other people's opinions, but the hubris that Trump was displaying there does suggest that the Yemenis did not capitulate, and I'll come on to explain why in a minute. But what was particularly interesting is that Israel was issuing, or various authorities in Israel were issuing statements saying that they were shocked at the US Houthi ceasefire, claiming that Trump had given them absolutely no heads up. And if we look at one commentator on X, who says basically, as he explained 1 month ago, the Houthis, or Ansarullah as they should be known, only started attacking US ships after Trump started bombing Yemen to retaliate on Israel's behalf. So the actual ceasefire, although it's good news, but it simply takes us back to March 2025 as regards conditions, because Israel is not included in this ceasefire, and that's a very important point to make here. And then shortly after this, Trump made, in inverted commas, a big announcement. So let's have a listen, or rather, he promised a big announcement. Let's listen to this statement to the press.
And we'll have, maybe before we're going to, as you know, the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, we're going to UAE and Qatar, and that'll be, I guess, Monday night. Some of you are coming with us. I think before then we're going to have a very, very big announcement to make, like as big as it gets, and I won't tell you on what, but it's going to, and it's very positive. I'd tell you if it was negative or positive. I can't keep that out. It is really, really positive. And that announcement will be made either Thursday or Friday or Monday before we leave. But it'll be one of the most important announcements that have been made in many years about a certain subject, very important subject. So you'll all be here.
Apparently, the Washington Post released today that the big announcement is that the Persian Gulf, which has been known as such since the 16th century, is about to be renamed the Arabian Gulf. So not only do we now have the Gulf of America as opposed to the Gulf of Mexico, we have another name change by Trump. This is according to certain officials within the US administration, yet to be confirmed. And I'm sure that the 3-day ceasefire had nothing to do with the fact that Trump is going to the Gulf countries, which would be number one on the target list from Yemen. And also, of course, that bombing any of those countries would seriously impact on the US economy, as it could potentially destroy the oil sector in those Gulf areas. So, but I'm sure that has nothing to do with it. I'm sure it's because the Yemenis wanted to capitulate. And then let's have a look at how well the US has actually been doing against Yemen. So titles yesterday in CNN: second US Navy jet is lost at sea from the Truman aircraft carrier. This one apparently was due to a failed arrestment. The pilots basically bailed out before the disaster happened, and the jet ended up at the bottom of the Red Sea. Of course, this isn't the first time. There was another jet, jet overboard, lost a 60 million jet at sea. This was in April. And actually, there was a third one, which people may not remember, back in December last year. This was reported in Aviation. In December, another FA-18F Super Hornet was shot down by US Navy cruiser USS Gettysburg in a friendly fire incident. So the US is not exactly performing terribly well against Yemen. It's certainly done nothing to prevent the targeting of the US aircraft carriers in the Red Sea. And then let's have a quick add up of the damage since the Al-Aqsa flood operations on the 7th of October. So 3 Hornets, 67 million each. So that's 201 million, 22 MQ-9s since the 7th of October, 4 MQ-9s, which are the drones, of course, before October the 7th. So the total so far is 1.03 billion US dollars. And on social media, a few people went to town with images of how well the US is doing as regards the loss, in inverted commas, of aircraft. On the left was a Yemeni joke. On the right was a Russian joke. I'm sure that has nothing to do with conditions elsewhere also. And of course, this, on a more serious level, this was a warning from the New York Times about 2 months ago. US commanders worry that the Yemen campaign will drain arms needed to deter China. So potentially another reason, of course, that Trump is looking for the US to pull out of any aggression against Yemen. And then let's have a look at Yemen's response, remembering, of course, that Israel is not included in the ceasefire. So the Humanitarian Coordination Center in Sana'a, Yemen, has officially notified the ICAO and the IATA, their airline associations, of the Yemeni armed forces' decision to impose an indefinite air traffic ban on Israel, which again will have huge ramifications for Israeli trade and economy. And then finally, this was a statement put out by the president of the Salvation government in Yemen, President Mahdi al-Mashat, Supreme Political Council in Yemen. There will be no retreat from supporting Gaza, no matter the cost. What happened proves that our strikes are effective and will continue. No aggression will deter us from our just decision to support Gaza until the Zionist aggression and siege on Gaza are halted. So Yemen has absolutely no intention of stopping its attempt to prevent genocide and punish the Zionist entity for committing genocide against Palestinians.
Thank you, Vanessa. Well, let's move on from there. What's the latest on Gaza?
Yeah, well, I mean, the horrors haven't ceased in Gaza, of course, and even under the Trump administration, and they're about to get a whole lot worse. So in the last few days, it's been reported that there has been permission, or rather tactical approval, for a total invasion of Gaza. This was published in The Cradle. And interesting that Trump, on this situation, on Gaza in particular, he's given Netanyahu the green light. As Israel prepares to flatten Gaza, not a top priority, says Trump, except, of course, for the waterfront property contracts that he's hoping to secure for his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. So let's have a look at what Bezalel Smotrich has said again in the last 2 days to the Times of Israel. Within half a year, the Gaza population will be concentrated in a narrow strip of land between the border with Egypt and the Morag corridor, which Israel has recently established inside Gaza. Gaza will be totally destroyed and territory north of Morag will be empty. What does this actually mean? I just want to show two maps. The first showing previously. It's not entirely current, but it's certainly fairly recent, and it's in French, but I think people can work it out without direct translation. You can see there the Morag corridor to the south of Gaza. You can see the area in green of Rafah, which is still effectively perceived as Palestinian by the Zionists. Then Israeli control at the Philadelphia corridor and the border with Egypt. And then beyond the Morag corridor, is the Khan Yunis band of territory. And if we look at the next map, we can see how devastating this is going to be for Palestinians. So the circle there goes from Khan Yunis to the north of Gaza, where you then enter the occupied territories of Palestine. So effectively what he's saying, not even the entirety of that southern section, only part of it sandwiched between Zionist forces will be used to house 2 million Palestinians who were formerly living in a strip of land 40 kilometers by 12 kilometers, about the size of the Isle of Wight, are now going to be condensed into a tiny area, which is effective. I don't even know how to describe it now. Smotrich went on to say the Gaza citizens will be concentrated in the south. They will be totally despairing, understanding there is no hope, and will be looking for relocation to begin a new life in other places. So effectively what the Zionists are saying, what they have done so far, the appalling atrocities that they've been committing on an hourly, daily basis against Palestinians was not enough. So now they're going to have to increase and double down on the pressure. And we'll come on to what else is going to be employed. But what's interesting, and we've talked about this before, that Israel is to use US military contractors, in other words, private military companies, in the new Gaza aid scheme. Now, what does this mean? There will be two private military contractors, basically UG Solutions. If we can just put the slide up on screen. UG Solutions, Anytime, Anywhere, and Safe Reach, which is the next slide. Now, the reason I haven't pulled out too much information on this is because there isn't any. What this reminds me of are the kind of intelligence or special forces cutout websites where you find absolutely no information about the teams. And in fact, the Safe Reach website page is only one page. So I've done here a summary of the Gaza plan based on the reports that I've seen. There isn't a sort of a comprehensive report on what's going to happen, but this gives a good idea. So in other words, the Zionists want to gain full control of the Gaza enclave, and they're claiming they want to eliminate Hamas. Of course, that hasn't gone particularly well for them so far. Zionist military occupation for an indefinite period of Gaza itself. Ethnic cleansing of 2 million Gazans. Of course, that is the final solution for the Zionists. Starvation as a strategy. So what they're intending to do is to reduce from 600 to 60 trucks per day, aid to be distributed only at 6 Zionist-controlled centers. The US private military contractors will be guarding those facilities. and also helping to man checkpoints. And guess what? There will be facial recognition access to those aid distribution centers. So again, the crossover between what is happening in the West and what is happening on a far more elevated scale in Palestine becomes very apparent. And then finally, the EU involvement, particularly with France, Gaza evacuation scheme, Israel's Trojan horse for ethnic cleansing, ? This again is in the cradle. But effectively, France is focusing on the evacuation of alleged French citizens and their entire extended family, which of course could be a large number of Gazans. And we've been hearing about the evacuation of the injured and so on. So yeah, this does appear to be a stealth evacuation policy as part of the final solution, the final ethnic cleansing of Gaza, and of course the West Bank.
Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you for that. With lots to talk about in Extra today, but